If Not For My Baby by Kate Golden is a contemporary romance following an American backup vocalist, Clementine Clark, and Irish artist Halloran as they tour the US. I was admittedly surprised to learn that this novel was traditionally published by an imprint of Penguin Random House rather than self published. The description on their website reads Clementine Clark isn't looking for love. Growing up with a single mom who weeps over a new guy each week tends to have that effect on a girl. But Clementine doesn't mind being the rational one. She's even buried her musical dreams so deeply within herself that she hardly notices the hole it's left in her life. That is until her best friend calls her with a life-changing opportunity to join Irish megastar Halloran on his first US tour as a backing vocalist. Clementine wants to reject the offer, but the pay is enough to change her and her mom's life. Overnight, Clementine goes from serving enchiladas at the Happy Tortilla to belting high notes before a cheering crowd. But the whiplash of trading small town Texas for sold out stadiums is nothing compared to the rush of performing with the enigmatic Thomas Patrick Halloran. Poet, introvert, and lyrical genius, Halloran quickly gets under Clementine's skin. The two couldn't see the world more differently, and yet, over the course of the next 8 weeks on tour, the romantic rock star might just strike an unforgettable chord in Clementine, but will it be enough for an encore? The problem, I think, becomes immediately apparent on the cover, which damn near rips off the cover of Hozier's Unheard, an EP including unreleased songs from his studio album Unreal Unearthed, and subsequently his 2025 tour merch. It's honestly baffling to me that something so blatant was approved by multiple people at a major publishing house, or an imprint of one. You also have the title, which is clearly meant to mimic the song NFWMB, or Nobody Fucks With My Baby from Wasteland Baby Special Edition, or the lyric There's Nothing Sweeter Than My Baby from one of Hozier's most iconic and well-known tracks, Work Song, a personal favorite of mine. Also, his stage name is Halloran, taken from his last name, and he has long hair and some scruff. 1 plus 1 equals 2. I will admit at this point that I haven't read If Not For My Baby, and I won't be reading it. I want to refer now to screenshots posted by Twitter user at @MWillComeBack, who has valiantly braved this book. Some of the other obvious Hozier allusions include soaring reveries that overflow with Irish mysticism. Fetishizing a real person's connection with and appreciation of their native culture is wild work, but okay. Everything is very Irish. Sometimes he even sings in the native tongue, and I'm forced to look up words like sapling. Sapling. Come on. You also have attempted lyrical allusions. I'd slice out my own tongue, offer it to my baby in hands cuffed, just to taste the perfect crookedness of her smile when she swallows me up. You're joking. There are more examples, but this quote to me specifically really encapsulates the lyrical bastardization going on in this book. Andrew, Tom, also tells the main character that a friend of his was killed by a drunk driver while trying to help a fox out of the road. @MWillComeBack points out that this is clearly meant to evoke the song Abstract Psychopomp from Unreal Unearthed, which Hozier has said was inspired by a similar incident that he witnessed. @MWillComeBack also makes a very important observation about Golden's fictionalization of Hozier. Oh, by the way, Tom Halloran is all of the romanticization of Hozier without the substance, activism, and influence from black artists. She leans into the whole Bogman thing and how all his songs are about sex, heartbreak, mythology, etc., barely the slightest mention of any politics. This is essential to point out when we think about how Golden's Halloran flattens, eroticizes, and mysticizes a complete stranger. Hozier is not a collection of romance novel tropes or walking folklore. He's a human dude who I hope never finds out that this book exists. Side note, I'll link @MWillComeBack's thread down below as well if you're interested. If you're chronically online, at this point you're probably getting flashbacks to Roughing the Princess by Ivy Smoke, a blatant and hypersexualized Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce ripoff romance. You may also be thinking about the two Lifetime Christmas movies about Swift and Kelsey. Goodreads user Joanne puts it succinctly in her review of Roughing the Princess. Don't even know where to begin on how gross and invasive it is to make money off imagining the sex lives of real people and not even bothering to pretend to change the plotline. The author should be ashamed. Not just inspired by, but a colored by numbers approximation of, again, strangers. This all got me thinking about the controversy and conversation surrounding the short story Cat Person by Kristen Rapanian. The story itself was originally published by The New Yorker in December of 2017. Cat Person follows an 18-year-old protagonist, Margot, as she navigates a relationship with a skeevy older guy named Robert. The story received massive attention and acclaim, more than the previously unknown Rapinian could have imagined. In July of 2021, 4 years later, Alexis Novicki, I hope I'm saying that correctly, I'm obviously not great at pronunciation, so apologies for anything that's pronounced incorrectly in this video, published an article in Slate called Cat Person and Me. In it, she writes, "Some of the most pivotal scenes, the sexual encounter, and the hostile text messages were unfamiliar to me. But the similarities to my own life were eerie. The protagonist was a girl from my small hometown who lived in the dorms at my college and worked at the art house theater where I'd worked and dated a man in his 30s as I had. I recognized the man in the story too. His appearance, tall, slightly overweight, with a tattoo on his shoulder. His attire, rabbit fur hat, vintage coat. His home, fairy lights over the porch, a large board game collection, framed posters. It was a vivid description of Charles, her ex-boyfriend. But that felt impossible. Could it be a wild coincidence? Or did Rapinian, a person I'd never met, somehow know about me? Novicki later learns through a friend of her ex-boyfriend Charles after his death in November of 2020 that Charles and Rapinian had known each other through social media. When Novicki reached out to Rapinian to ask if Cat Person had been based on her, Rapinian wrote back, "When I was living in Ann Arbor, I had an encounter with a man. I later learned from social media that this man previously had a much younger girlfriend. I also learned a handful of facts about her, that she worked in a movie theater, that she was from a town adjacent to Ann Arbor, and that she was an undergrad at the same school I attended as a grad student. Using those facts as a jumping off point, I then wrote a story that was primarily a work of the imagination, but which also drew on my own personal experiences, both past and present. In retrospect, I was wrong not to go back and remove those biographical details, especially the name of the town. Not doing so was careless." Novicki seems to end the article on a note of uncertainty, unsure of how to hold her actual relationship with Charles. What's difficult about having your relationship rewritten and memorialized in the most viral short story of all time is the sensation that millions of people now know that relationship as described by a stranger. Meanwhile, I'm alone with my memories of what really happened. Just like any death leaves you burdened with the responsibility of holding on to the parts of a person that only you knew. So where does that leave things? The broader question I want to ask is, how much is too much when it comes to fictionalizing the world around you? All writers are thieves. It's impossible not to be. Every piece of fiction that has ever existed and will ever exist is a Frankenstein collage of the creator's experiences, the experiences of others, and stories that they've read or heard or seen. This is the power of fiction. This is what enriches fiction and allows us to feel anger or happiness or sorrow for completely made up people and situations. There's a kind of unspoken deal, I think, between creators and the world, that we take in bits and pieces, never enough to make caricatures of specific people or situations, but enough to let fiction strengthen our connection to our world and ourselves. Something like If Not For My Baby, in my opinion, breaks that deal. It's a caricature. I don't think it's always irrefutably possible to make that determination about a book, but I feel pretty confident in saying that about this book. What a creepy, horrible thing to do. In general, though, where do we find that line? Is it in the biographical details that Rapinian left in Cat Person? Is it in the description of a character's physical appearance, a particular birthmark, a way of walking, their job, their hobbies? Is that enough to point at and say, you stole from my life and that's wrong? I don't think that limit, the boundary, is always so easy to find, especially in our literary age of autofiction, fictionalizing your own life, and our technological age of constant connection to one another through social media. I don't know if any one person necessarily has the perfect solution. Also, look at this AI generated Halloran Tour t shirt by a company called Blissfully Bookish. Enough said.